Peace will feel boring before it feels nourishing. Calm will feel empty before it feels spacious. Stillness will feel awkward before it feels sacred. So my plea to you guys is do not rush the process. Do not rush this phase of your healing. You are not failing. You are rewiring. Welcome to Healing the Mind and Empowering the Soul podcast, episode 8. The title of this episode is When Healing Feels Unsafe, Understanding Trauma, Regulation, and the Fear of Calm. I am your host, Sidi Justinsky. I'm a dual board certified family nurse practitioner and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. My work sits at the intersection of clinical medicine, psychiatry, and the deeper emotional and spiritual layers of healing. I support individuals who are often highly capable, deeply resilient, and quietly exhausted. People who have survived a great deal and are now trying to understand why healing feels more complicated than they expected. Today's episode is for those of you who have done the right things, and I'll put right things in quote. You left the toxic situation, you slowed down, you created boundaries, you prayed for peace. And yet, when the chaos stopped, your body didn't relax. Instead, you felt anxious, restless, uneasy, maybe even afraid. This is episode 8, When Healing Feels Unsafe. How do you understand your trauma? How do you regulate it? And how do you live from the fear to the calm? This episode addresses a phase of healing that is rarely normalized and often, very often misunderstood. It is the stage where healing begins to take hold externally, but the nervous system has not yet caught up internally. From a clinical perspective, healing is not just insight-based. It is not something the body automatically understands simply because the mind has decided it is time to move on. Healing is a physiological reorganization. The nervous system must learn safety first, and learning safety takes time. When someone has lived in prolonged stressful situations, whether due to trauma, emotional unpredictability, chronic responsibility, abandonment, or repeated disappointment, the body adapts. It stays alert. Muscles remain tense. Thoughts stay busy. Stress hormones circulate at levels meant for emergency. Over time, this state becomes familiar. Survival kind of becomes normal. So when the threat finally decreases, when life slows down, relationships stabilize, or pressure lifts, the nervous system doesn't immediately interpret calm as safety. Instead, it asks, what am I missing? Clinically, this is why you hear a lot of people say, nothing is wrong, but I feel anxious. Things are finally calm, but I don't trust it. I should feel better by now, don't you think? But I don't. This is not self-sabotage. This is conditioning. The brain is designed to prioritize familiarity over comfort. It does not ask whether something is healthy. It asks whether something is predictable. For many trauma-exposed individuals, chaos is predictable. Calm is not. This is why calm can feel empty. Silence can feel very loud. Stillness can feel very threatening. In clinical settings, we see this pattern often. As a matter of fact, patients become anxious when symptoms improve. Individuals feel disconnected in healthy relationships. High-performing professionals feel at first lost when they are no longer operating under pressure. When survivor has been organizing the organizing principle of identity, healing includes or often introduces a gap. And the nervous system asks, who am I without the struggle? That question alone can activate anxiety. Hence why most trauma victims would suffer from what we call in psychiatry hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is frequently mistaken for strength. No, it is not. It's praised as responsibility, productivity, or resilience. But clinically, hypervigilance is exhaustion disguised as control. It is the body refusing to stand down because standing down once felt dangerous. Yes. And regulation begins when cortisol decreases and adrenaline subsides. The body can experience the shift as vulnerability. Rest feels at first very unsafe. Calm feels like exposure. Stillness feels like waiting for something bad to happen. You know, the expression waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is why early healing often includes irritability, emotional swings, emotional highs and lows, grief, self doubt, or urges to return to old patterns. These are often misinterpreted as regression. In reality, they are signs that the nervous system is relearning safety. Therapeutically, this is a critical phase. Many people abandon healing here, not because it isn't working, but because it doesn't feel the way they imagine it will. They believe peace should arrive without discomfort. But regulation is not declared, it is learned through repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. In therapy and in psychiatric care, we do not force calm. No, 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 no. We introduce safety gradually through consistent routines, grounding techniques or practices, and experiences that prove over time that rest does not lead to harm. This includes somatic practices, slow breathing techniques to stimulate the vagus nerve, grounding practices that orient the body to the present moment, and compassionate self talk. Statements like, I am safe right now, often feels false at first, not because they are untrue, but because the body has not learned their language yet. Discomfort in calm does not mean danger. It often means newness. Spiritually speaking, this stage of healing can be just as challenging. Many people trust deeply in crisis but struggle to trust in quiet. Striving becomes a form of safety. Stillness exposes what urgency once protected us from feeling. So, healing often asks us to release control before we feel ready, to rest without guilt, to stop proving our worth through endurance, to believe that peace is not a pause before pain, but a legitimate state of being. This does not reflect weak faith, it actually reflects unpracticed rest. There is also grief here, no? Grief that rarely gets named. Not grief for what was lost, but grief for who you were when survival gave you structure. Many people miss the clarity of crisis. Without realizing it, they mourn the version of themselves that knew exactly what to do under pressure. Between survivor and safety lies a quiet, uncomfortable space. Many people rush to fill it with busyness, overfunctioning, or distractions. But this space is not emptiness. It is what we call in psychiatry integration. Healing is not about eliminating discomfort. No, 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 no. It is about learning to stay present without returning to what was once harmed or what once harmed you. Peace will feel boring before it feels nourishing. Calm will feel empty before it feels spacious. Stillness will feel awkward before it feels sacred. So, my plea to you guys is do not rush the process. Do not rush this phase of your healing. You are not failing, you are rewiring. So, with that said, I just want to empower each and every one of you listening that if you need a podcast That is not going to rush you. Not going to make you feel like you do not belong. You are welcome to subscribe to Healing the Mind and Empowering the Soul channel. This space is for those navigating healing that feels confusing, uncomfortable, or slower than expected. So, in today's episode, when healing feels unsafe, understanding your trauma is very important. If you've ever reached a season where life finally slowed down, and instead of relief, you felt anxious or unsettled, this episode is for you. Healing is not just a mindset, it is a nervous system process. And today, we've already talked about why calm can feel uncomfortable before it feels safe. Wherever you are, listen gently. You don't need to fix anything, just be here. So, as we close today's episode, I want to remind you this. If healing feels harder than you expected, it does not mean you are doing it wrong. If there's nothing you take from here, I want you to hear me clearly. If healing feels harder than you expected, it does not mean you are doing it wrong. It often means your body is learning safety for the very first time. Discomfort in calm is not failure, it is transition. Healing does not ask you to rush, it asks you to stay present. So, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for spending this time with me on Healing the Mind and Empowering the Soul podcast. Until next time, honor your process, protect your peace, and trust that learning to rest is part of becoming whole once more again.